This episode is brought to you by podiatrygrowth.com/Pod Patrol.
So for the Pod Patrol listeners, what should they do to take advantage of the assistance that you can provide?
I worked with Jeff here to create a 5-day email course talking about 5 different systems that are going to help you drill down on what's important as far as gaining new patients. And if people enjoy that, I always have the option of 30-minute free strategy session where we kind of go over what people's current challenges are.
So a 5-email introductory course. That sounds expensive. What are we paying for that? $1,000, $10,000? What are people going to expect to pay for that introductory course for them?
Yeah, this is a free gift to my colleagues. Just gives you an opportunity to do a bit of a self-assessment.
If anyone's interested in more information, they can go to podiatrygrowth.com/Pod Patrol.
Every step matters. Pod Patrol. Pod Patrol. Pod Patrol. Every step matters. Feet hit the ground, we rise, we climb. Ain't stopping now, it's our time to shine. Turn it up loud. Pod Patrol. Pod Patrol. Pod Patrol. Pod Patrol. Every step matters.
All right, welcome back to Pod Patrol with your host, Dr. Jeff Dykes. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Rob Amiot. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So give everyone a little quick rundown of who you are, where you practice, and how you got there before we start jumping into the nitty-gritty here.
Sure. Rob Amiot, I practice in the Milwaukee area, in the western and southern suburbs of Milwaukee. I guess in next month, it'll be 23 years.
Wow.
that I've been in practice. It's insane. It goes by so fast. But I'm in an orthopedic practice, part of the orthopedic hospital with my partners, which has been fantastic. It's a great place to practice medicine. I'm married. I have 3 kids that keep me extremely busy. And I've been working in the med device space with my own company since 2020. Just a perfect time to start a med device company.
Yeah, I'm
Right?
sure. Perfect time to do anything in America. Well, around the world. I was going to say in America, but anywhere around the world.
Totally.
Difficult times. So
true. But Jeff, I really appreciate this opportunity to come and talk to you today. I really enjoy your podcast. The one that you did recently with Mark Allen, I thought was fantastic, and talking about, and it really resonated with me, and I'm sure it did with you too, about how the worst thing that can happen for your child is someone tells them that they have potential. I thought that was so interesting. And I love the way that your podcasts go, where you just weave down these roads and you get information from, the surgeons or others that you have on there that it really hits home as a surgeon. And I think you can do that in a way that others can't because of your depth, your knowledge, your background. And so great job. You're really promoting the DPM community. You're promoting the knowledge, the skills, the training that we have now. And it's just so great to see. So, and I'm really pumped to be here today.
thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. So the reason we brought you on today is you're going to give us a deep dive into developing your own product. There's lots of surgeons out there who go into the OR every single day, all different specialties, but we'll focus on our niche of podiatry. And we do something a certain way. And there are 2 types of people. There's the first person that just does surgery, forgets about it, goes out to lunch, moves on. And there's the other type of person that thinks, this is kind of silly. Why do we do it this way? I feel like there's a better way to do this. And if there was, what would that look like? And if I figured out what it looked like, how would I actually get to use that? So you are someone who's actually gone through that process and could speak from a first person perspective for these people. That's a lot of P's. First person perspective for these people on this process, another P, and see how it goes. So let's say that you start this idea, you're in surgery, or I don't know where you are when you come up with this idea, and you think, all right, there's a better way to do this, or I've got this idea. Now what?
These are great questions, and there's so much material here that it's I'll try and tell you my standpoint of what led me into this,
Yeah.
and how I went from having an idea when we'll call it 12, 15 years ago to where I am today.
Hmm.
And the majority of what I want to explain to people, and Jeff, I'm gonna tell you all the mistakes I made. Very few people will do that, but I'm gonna tell you all the mistakes I made. So if anybody wants to travel down this road, uh, you can listen to this and say, okay, Amiot made all these mistakes. I don't want to make all those mistakes. Okay,
Yeah, that's
so
always super helpful. It's like when you go to lecture too, and people are
yeah,
it's one thing for them to show their beautiful X-rays. You're like, well, that looks good. But then if they're like, well, here's what I did, or here's what I used to do, and I don't do it
yeah,
anymore, and here's why. You're like, oh, that's fantastic. I'm gonna
yeah.
thank you for sharing that. That's way more valuable.
It's so true, but people don't have the ability or the confidence. I think when you're 2 or 3 years out in practice and you're putting up X-rays, you want to only show the what has gone amazing. But when
Right.
you've been out in practice 20 years and people know that you do a nice job, and you put up complications, they're like, "Hey, that could happen to me too."
Yeah.
And you're in a perspective where you're able to do that. You know you're a good surgeon. You know you get good outcomes, but just like every surgeon says, you do enough surgery, you're gonna have bad outcomes.
Hmm.
Same with med device, right? So back in I think it was 2012, I brought a product to a company. I had it all drawn out. I had a whole technique guide made up. I brought it to a company. I was young. I was naive. I had no idea the entire process. And this company said, we're working on something just like that. So we want to stop you right there. And
I
I
think
was
that's a
like,
common thing that companies say, because then when they
it,
steal your idea, you're like, oh, well, maybe they were working on something similar. But I feel like that's just the go-to comment that oh yeah, we've thought of this before. Like, I don't know. I've talked to companies before. It's a very common, like, oh, well, you're not as special as you think you are.
right. And so this was a particular plate for ankle fractures. And that plate is widely used today. And every company has it. And it was gone with the wind from me. And it might have been 2 years later, this plate came out. And
Hmm.
I was too naive to realize that maybe they took my idea. I'm not accusing them of that, but um, and so that's number one. Number two is I brought a idea to a company that was more, I won't mention names here, but was more in the nitinol space. And this was an idea that would kind of combine the surgeons that loved plates and screws, and it would combine the nitinol space with it. I brought this idea. I had these great drawings, a technique guide, everything drawn out, even the size of the staple, the length of the plates, all of it, right?
Hmm.
And this was a super surgeon meeting, and they all felt that this was a terrible idea. Why are you bringing this to us? And lo and behold, another company came out with these products maybe 5 years later. It became wildly successful. So after
Hmm.
that, I said, okay, what am I doing wrong? And two, any idea that I come up with, I have to make sure that if it is going to become successful, that I have to make sure to um, take the steps to ensure that, right? And so the biggest thing I want to have surgeons realize from our podcast today is, how do you protect yourself? How do you protect your idea? And if it truly is your idea and no one else's, and you bring it to a company, how do you ensure that they're not going to take it from you? And
Right.
so the best way to do that is and it doesn't cost a lot of money, and have your idea and do it in a process where I did it. Have it drawn out, have dimensions, have it drawn from the top, the side, three different angles you draw it out. This isn't a napkin drawing. You have to
Hmm.
draw it out three different ways. You have to write a technique guide. You have to write the indications for this product. and then you bring it to an intellectual property attorney and you have them file a provisional patent.
Hmm.
It might cost anywhere from whoever you bring it to, it could be a couple $1,000s. It might be depending on which attorney you find. We have a great attorney that we use in Wisconsin here, Brad Meyer. He's fantastic. Um, but any place they'll have great IP attorneys, and so anywhere from two to $3,000, you can get a provisional patent filed.
Hmm.
And what does that mean? It means you are in line, okay, to get to the patent office. So there's a line there. So there might be 10,000 patents ahead of you till someone at the patent office looks at yours.
Hmm.
But the date you get in line is your date and time. And so if someone comes up with something similar behind you that would have similar claims, they're now going to be infringing on you because you
Sure.
were in line first. So it protects your idea. So if you have a great idea and maybe you have filed a provisional patent, that's a time when you can show it to people. That's a time when you can take it to a company. And the first thing, and for instance, if you want to take it to a large company X, Y, or Z that you're working with already on something, maybe they asked you to help them design a ankle fracture plate,
Hmm.
um, and you bring them a different idea, the first thing you say is, I have filed a provisional patent on this product. I'm bringing it to you to see if you're interested in developing it with me.
Yeah.
And that's a way where you are insured to get some sort of compensation for that down the line if it does go to market and if it does become successful. A lot of times that could be royalties. It could be a licensing deal. There's lots of avenues there. But the biggest thing is file a provisional patent. Okay, that's really important. And don't show it to anybody until you file that provisional patent if you think it's a good idea. Because even
That's
if you
that's
yeah,
that's
go
one of the
ahead.
tricky parts about that, because I've had lots of ideas in the past, and you have to spend a decent chunk of money to start to make that a reality. And it's so tempting to want to tell a bunch of people, like, hey, what do you think about this idea? Just because in case they go, that's not, I don't know, they already know, I don't think I'd use that. Then you're saving yourself some money. And it's kind of this tricky back and forth of like, as soon as you tell people, I mean, obviously you're going to trust some people more than you trust certain companies and that you trust the general public that you don't know. But that is a tricky thing of having to spend some money on your idea without really, you think it's a great idea. Every idea you have, like, oh, I should have Mexican
Yeah.
for lunch. That sounds like a great idea, right? Sounds like a great idea to you. Maybe your wife's like, no, I had Mexican yesterday, but so it's not so good of an idea. You get my point there, where it's like you're going to spend all this money on something that you think is a great idea, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
I completely agree. And this is where risk comes into play, right? You have to take a little bit of risk on your idea if you feel really strongly about it and bringing it to a company. All
Hmm.
right. And you know who you should tell before you file that provisional patent about your idea?
Hmm.
Nobody. Don't talk to anyone. Don't show it to anyone. Don't get anyone's opinion, even if they sign an NDA, right?
Hmm.
Don't do it. How many people do you hear that have signed an NDA with someone and they're like, oh, yeah, I saw, yeah, Dr. Amiot, I see his product came out. And yeah, somebody showed that to me like 2.5 years ago, and so those things stand up, but it's hard to keep that product under wraps. So until you file that provisional patent, don't show anybody. Um, but a couple things. So if you're a surgeon and let's say you've done 1,000 or 2,000 of these products or procedures, and you're like, this product is an unmet need right here. This is going to be huge. File a provisional patent.
Hmm.
Okay. Once you do that, you can move on to the next step. So that's so important.
Will you explain
Um,
real quick what an NDA is, a non-disclosure agreement? Tell people what that means.
yeah. So non-disclosure agreement basically says that anything I share with you, okay, you can't steal from me and take it and profit from it, or you can't take it and show it to others who could profit from it and damage me. And if you do that, I have every right to sue you for damages.
Mhm.
Okay. And likewise, if that person, you want it both ways, right? So if, let's say I show you an idea, Jeff, and then you say, hey, what if you added, these two buttons and a thumb screw over here? Now you're giving me information and it protects you in that same process, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, so it protects both parties from basically stealing ideas or taking intellectual property from them.
So as we go through this, let's use your actual ideas. So let's
Yeah,
use the actual ideas that you've come up with because I think it'll resonate more because people can picture it
absolutely.
in their mind what we're talking about. So what was your very skip the ones where the companies were less than forthright with everything. Let's go to the ones that are actually in market now. Start with that idea. Take
Yeah,
us back to the beginning of that. You're like, I've got an idea. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to file a provisional patent. Then I'm going to
yes,
start doing X, Y, and Z.
yes. Uh, let's do that. I want to tell you and your listeners, which you have so many, it's amazing. Surgeons are now, and me too. So when I say surgeons, I'm a surgeon. I'm still practicing full time. I'm still doing 4 to 6 surgeries, 8 surgeries a week, depending on the week, right?
Hmm.
So surgeons are naive on this process. And I think hopefully this can help surgeons become more educated on the entire process. So if you think that I take my first product, if you think I take my first product right here to get a patent on it, once I have a patent, I'm going to sell it to company X for millions. Wrong. Grossly wrong. But did we all think that that was going to happen? Yes.
Yeah.
So wrong. Okay. Number two, this product right here, once the FDA said, yes, you're approved. I can take this product then to company XYZ ABC, and they're all going to offer me big money and I'm going to sell the product to them. And that's going to happen, right? Wrong. That's not how it works. Now, maybe there is a company out there where they had really great intellectual property, didn't bring much of that product to market, but because of how much IP they had in a particular space, they were bought early. That's rare. That's
Hmm.
very rare. So I want to, um, take it off the table that you make one little product idea and then you're going to be a millionaire and wildly successful. Wrong.
Hmm.
Couldn't be further from the truth. So I came up with this idea, and this is a great discussion of how I started. So this was, and I trained it back in 20 plus years ago. Back then, chevrons were wildly popular. Okay, Lapidus procedures also popular. Zero MIS when I started in my training. Right
Hmm.
now, things have shifted a lot. But what I said is there's a lot of people out there that really like the chevron. And so I created a product that allows you to do a chevron procedure through a 1 centimeter incision and to throw your screw across. And it's extra capsular. It's for those moderate bunions. It's amazing for people over 50. And I'm like, everyone is going to love this product.
Hmm.
I filed a provisional patent. I partnered with a company that um, I was going to do nothing other than develop the product, raise some capital for us, and I was going to be a chief medical officer. That was it. The whole thing fell apart, and here I am today running a full company on my own, right? So, um, I guess from my mistakes, what I should have done is asked myself all of these questions that I'm going to list for you, and we can go through these as we get through the podcast. But number one, if you have an idea and you file a provisional patent, you have to ask yourself, how far are you willing to take this product? And I would write it down because I had this plan right here that is so far behind me. That's like, I'm like almost to New York and I started in Los Angeles, right?
Hmm. And part
Um,
of that is time and part of that is money, I would imagine. Those are your two biggest investments. You're investing your time, you're investing your money. So when you say how much of yourself do you want to put into that, those are the two main things you're talking about.
Big time. Yes. So question number two, So the first one is time, right? How far are you willing to take this?
Yeah.
Number two is how much money are you willing to put in? So Jeff,
Right.
you have an idea. Likely you're going to go to your wife and ask her if you can take, a couple $100,000 and bring this product to this point. Or maybe it's $50,000, whatever you say, like how much money are you willing to put of your own money into this company?
Right.
Okay. I had this amount, right? And I was grossly wrong. I ended up putting in wait, the ceiling's up there. You can see the ceiling. Okay, so that was mistake. These are all mistakes I'm telling you that I made, all right?
Yeah.
Um, and so find out next, how much does it cost to file a patent and obtain a working prototype, okay? And a sample that you can use, you can test, and you can know. Are you going to fund that all yourself, or are you going to take money from others? Okay. And if you're going to take money from others, now you're raising capital. Now you have to start a company because
Hmm.
other people aren't going to give you money without some sort of, hey, I'm Jeff. You want to invest in my company? Great. I'm going to take your money, but you want something to show that you've actually invested. So you need
Right.
to start a company. You need to have an attorney write up an operating agreement. You need to have a private placement memorandum that says, hey, Jeff, you could lose all your money in this company, right? You have to have investor documents, all of subscription agreements, operating agreement, all of these things. And so you go from this to now you're way up here, right?
Yeah.
From that's a huge step that you take.
All
And
I hear that whole time is cash register.
it's
Cha-ching,
so,
cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. You want to do that? That's money. You want to do that? That's money. You got to
yeah,
start this. You got to hire an attorney. That's money. That's
yeah.
money. It's a lot. Adds up.
And when I first started, this group that I partnered with for a short time in the beginning felt that it was going to take us $188,000 to get to the commercialization step.
Hmm.
They were woefully wrong, and I was also, and I thought that that number was high, but
Hmm.
somebody much smarter than me told me it takes a lot more money and a lot more time than you think. And so
You
the
can s- you
last
can see real
question,
quick. Sorry, you can see real
yeah,
quick why people want to take their ideas to a company
right.
because a lot of people don't have that much money or they're not willing to risk that much money, but they think it's a great idea. And here, company, you should take all your money and then give me most of it back when it's successful. But you see why that's tempting. But sorry, keep going.
And we're going to talk about how to do that and protect yourself, right?
Sure.
Um, so the last question, and this is going to be funny for you and I think, but the last question you need to ask yourself, are you willing to be the dumbest person in the room? Okay. And the reason I say this is because I'm at a point now where, let's liken it to surgery. So when I first started, it was like I was a resident doing my first surgery. Okay. And where I'm at now in this process, we'll call it, I've been out in practice and I've done a couple hundred surgeries or 400 surgeries, whatever, right,
Hmm.
of particular things. And so there is a big learning curve. But the point I'm trying to make is, are you willing to be the dumbest person in the room? Is in order to succeed in this space, you have to surround yourself with people that you know are way smarter than you. Because if you're looking around the room and you're the smartest one in the room, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, you're going to fail. That's the best advice I can give you as well, is surround yourself with people who know everything you don't know. You know how to operate, you know what to design, but surround yourself with people that are much smarter than you.
We're going to
Number
save your.
two,
Yeah, go.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say you're going to save yourself a lot of time and energy and possibly money when you go to someone who knows how to take the shortcut versus you trying to do it yourself and taking much, much longer and much, much more money potentially to get to the same destination.
Totally agree. And number two, so with my first product, I thought that this was going to be a huge hit, right? Um, I went to friendlies that I knew and I said, like, Jeff, you're my friendly. right? And I come to you and I say, Jeff, what do you think of this product, right? And you don't want to hurt my feelings. You don't want to tell me it's a bad idea.
Right.
And so you say, yeah, I really like that idea, et cetera, et cetera. That's the wrong process, right? And so if I had to do it again with my first product, um, I would put it in front of people, put it on a sawbones, put it in a cadaver lab, have them work it through, follow the technique guide, do it 2, 3 times, pay them some money. It's going to cost you some money to do that, but to give you some honest feedback, and
Mhm.
that may have changed my entire course. So don't go to your friendlies. Go to people you don't know, ask them for their honest opinion, and pay them for their time.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good tip. That's good advice.
Yeah. So that was another mistake I made. Right.
Yeah,
So,
people are they some people don't care. Some people are like, I would change this, I would change that. And some people are just like they just want to move on and not hurt any feelings and just say, looks good, keep up the good work.
totally.
See you next
And
time.
and that's what your friendlies are gonna do.
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna do. And so, that comes to a point where when you're in this process, so let's say that I have a great idea. I file a provisional patent. Now we want to go to people and see, um, what do they think of this? It's hard for people to give you their idea because, um, I in the brief time I've talked to you, I think you are more of a person where you can visualize things internally very well, three-dimensionally, whereas other people can't. Like you bring them, our second product, our clamp. You bring them this on paper and they're like, "Well, what? I don't get it. How does it work?"
Hmm.
So you have to have something tangible that they can give you feedback on.
So how
And
do you
so
do that? What's the best step to get an initial prototype? Who do you reach out to? There's companies across the United States and across the world that manufacture everything, but how do
yes.
you know who to reach out to? What does that process look like?
Yeah. Well, it's become a lot easier today than it was 5 years ago because you find an engineer who has experience in the med device space. And um, if there's people out there that are looking for it, I'm happy to introduce to people I know. But I use a gentleman in Indiana that I was introduced to from someone else. And I had asked around and someone recommended this person. You go to an engineer, you show them your drawings, you give them dimensions as best you can. They will put something together for you and they can do it on a 3D model. And so you
Hmm.
can rotate it, you can manipulate it on your computer screen and you're like, hey, I want to change this. I really love that. We have to make this a little lighter. And then they make you a 3D printed version of it and send it to you. And then you put it on a sawbones just like this and you
Hmm.
start playing with it and working with it. Um, and once you get it, you might go back and forth 2, 3, 4 times, depending on, your how your process works and how good your engineer is, and then you'll have a working prototype. And that process is fairly easy and it's not grossly expensive to do that. And so that's how you get to the working prototype stage.
And then you take it and then you can put it on, like you said, and then you start realizing, oh, I thought this would move that way, but it actually moves the opposite way. I need to figure out a way to change that and articulate better or XYZ, all the different things that come with it's highly improbable, maybe impossible that your first
Yeah.
design, your first sketch is going to be the same as your last. You need a working prototype to be able to figure out what to change.
100%. Yeah, you can think about it all internally. And I will tell you that on our first product, it was much harder than on our second, but on our third, on our fourth, on our fifth. Like our latest product, we designed it, tried it, it needed no adjustments at all. But it was much simpler than our other products as well. But yes, it's so important to get that 3D prototype, get it in the hands of you. You have that provisional patent. You're going to take it to friendlies, get their ideas and comments and feedbacks, and also take it to people you don't know, pay them for their time, put it in their hands. You walk away. They're going to fill out a form and send it to you, others, etc. And then you'll get some real feedback. and see where you want to go.
And then what? Is the goal originally for you that to then take that working prototype to a company, or is it to, all right, well, I got to start packaging it, sterile processing, and I'm going to use it on some patients first to prove that it works?
Yeah. These are great questions. Now, at any point, you can, we'll call it like this is like a train ride, right? And so you're on the train at any, and then we have a bunch of stops along the way. Well, stop number one is getting IP. Stop number two is having a working prototype. It works great. You love it. Now what? You can, at the next stop, you can get off and say, I want to bring this. I love the product. I don't want to take it to the limit here. I want to get off this train now. Okay. I don't want to raise more money. I don't want to, um, and this is where I think, you can file a provisional patent, you can work with an engineer, you can get a working prototype, and a lot of surgeons can fund that themselves and then bring it to a company,
Mhm.
right? And a company is more likely to, if they feel like it uh, fills a gap in their bag, they're more likely to potentially license that product or at least put it in their bag and try it and see how it goes. And that's a
Okay.
great option for surgeons. It protects them, it gets their product out there, and it can work. Some companies will do that, others won't, but it certainly is a great option, and you can get off the train at that time.
We'll be right back after this. For more information, go to podiatrygrowth.com/podpatrol.
So the people have signed up for the 5 email course and 30-minute free conversation with you to analyze where their marketing needs improvement. What steps can they take next?
Yeah, the next step is a deep dive. It's what I call an online practice x-ray. I look into your Google Analytics, your Google Ads. And then the last part of the online practice x-ray is to provide you high ROI marketing plan. It's a really in-depth diagnostic that will give you a clear direction about what those next steps are to help you grow your practice. This is something I generally charge $2,000 for, but since they're Pod Patrol listeners, we're going to chop that in half and charge $1,000 for this diagnostic. You'll have a written document at the end with the competitor analysis, what you're doing now, and a clear marketing plan to make sure that you can be cost effective when it comes to marketing your practice.
Absolutely. I love to hear that. Paw Patrol listeners are getting 50% off from Jim McDaniel, marketing expert at podiatrygrowth.com. If anyone's interested in more information, they can go to podiatrygrowth.com/podpatrol. Yeah. And so, I mean, what was your end goal? What was your thought? Were you more of a company guy, or were you more of a, I'm going to build this as big as I can build it? Like, what was your original thought process?
Originally, I wanted nothing more than to create products and have someone else do every other aspect of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I got into. That fell apart, and now here I am in 2026, 6 years later, running a company while still practicing full time. It's uh, it's a challenging process. It's an arduous process. It's not ideal, but at the same time, it's exciting, it's rewarding, to create something, that is different. Like we it's so great to see we created this Lapidus reduction clamp, that can be used for MIS Lapidus or an open Lapidus, which is still, despite what people say, everything's going to MIS, it's not. There's still lots of people doing Lapidus, and we created a product with an unmet need. So I had done thousands of these procedures. I created this product that requires no incisions. It's radiolucent. It corrects in all three planes, frontal, transverse, and then it still allows plantar flexion. We were really excited about this product. And in the beginning, I felt that our Chevron was going to be our big product, and I had to pivot, realizing that not as many people were into that. The tides were shifting. Lapidus was becoming more popular, and now MIS is becoming more popular. So you have to be able to shift and pivot in your startup, or you're going to be left behind and you're going to be shut down. And so we pivoted. We designed this. Our latest product again, also where you have to think about what's another unmet need? What's something that's missing in my operating room? That's the best way I can say it. What is something that's missing in my operating room? Or what is something that may be out there now, but is really a challenge to use? Or, every time I do that procedure, I have to use this product and it's such a challenge. If it was designed this way, it would make this so much easier. Now, those are gaps, those are unmet needs in product portfolios that surgeons should bring to market, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting to have your first idea not do as well as you thought and a subsequent idea do better. But that's the nature of life in that you can't predict the future and you just kind of keep going. But as soon as you start developing a second product and a third product, now you've got a portfolio of products that now you are a real company. There aren't many companies that are just one product. They exist, they're out there. Uh,
Well,
but
yeah, I mean, we've seen that, where there was a big company out there with a single product, and they've started to pivot too, with the changing of the tides and the procedures, and so you have to be able to do that even as a startup as well as a big company, right?
yeah. How do you know? Okay, let's take us through. You've got this product and you find a manufacturer and you say, I want to order 5 of this product right here, and I'm going to sterile pack it, and we're going to use these in the OR. What does that look like from an approval standpoint? Does that, can you do that with a provisional patent? Do you have to get the FDA involved at that point? Does someone have to come and check your product to make sure it really is sterile? How does that conversation with the hospital look like, or what does that look like to say, hey, I've got this product, I want to use it in the OR? Can you take us through that part of it?
Totally. So you can't do that. The short answer is that is not possible. Zero chance. Can you make a 3D prototype? Yes. Can you use it in the operating room? Absolutely not.
Which is
Um,
a good thing. You just don't
yes.
want anything
Yeah.
going into the OR and people doing experimental surgery. I fully get that. So how do you get that approval?
So then you go from, hey, I have a working prototype, right? And I want to bring this to market. What does that take? So you have to so this product here is polycarbonate and PEEK, very, very commonly used. You use them in your operating room all the time.
Hmm.
But for me to get this into my operating room, I need FDA approval, okay, of the materials of the product. Now, this is where things get really interesting and great as well as challenging at the same time. I've used the same materials on this product as this product, okay? So once it's approved with this product, I can now use it on this product without having to go back to the FDA because this is a
Hmm.
class 1 product, which means nothing stays in the foot, okay?
Sure.
But for the original product, which we received our FDA approval on, um, even though I use PEEK, and even though I use polycarbonate, and even though I use stainless steel, and even though I use titanium, and 700 companies out there have those same combinations that are used, I have
Hmm.
to prove to the FDA to make we can't make 5 of them. It's just not possible. You'd probably have to make at least 250 on your first run because to make 100 would be, let's say, we'll just throw out a number, $10,000, right? Which is not
Hmm.
even close to the number, but we'll just say that. But to make 250, it's $12,500. And so you're like, well, we might as well just make the extra 150.
Yeah.
But so to take that product idea from a prototype to get it into the operating room with these materials, you have to go through a full FDA approval. You have to do testing on your screws to make sure that even though it's, a headless compression screw or a fully threaded screw that's titanium, you have to prove that it meets the standards, the ASTM standards, that it's not going to break, it's going to be biocompatible, it's not going to harm anybody when it's sitting in their skin, under their skin for 20 years, right? You have to prove to the FDA for that. You have to take the materials and they basically put all these materials together and they crunch them all up and then test them to make sure that it's not going to harm anyone. And
Sure.
so once you have a FDA approval, then you make the products. Then you take the products to surgeons, get surgeons to want to be interested in trying them or using them. And then the real challenge starts. Bringing it to hospitals, seeing if you can get it
Hmm.
approved at the hospitals. And so there's, again, like riding this train, there's many, many steps and stops along the way that you either get off at that step or you keep going. I'm still riding the train. I think I have quite a ways to go.
So this is a classic David and Goliath story from the very, very beginnings to the very, very end, whether it's from product design, development, going up against these companies who are constantly trying to steal your ideas. You've had it happen. Lots of people have had it happen. I've had people on the podcast before have had their ideas stolen. To think that it doesn't happen is extremely naive. It does happen, and it happens all the time. David versus Goliath. And then on the back end, you're dealing with these large hospital corporations who strike up deals with these companies who work on volume and make these deals with the hospital that essentially says, hey, as long as you use our products, and at the end of the year, we'll check to make sure that you used X number of percent of our product. And if you did, we're going to give you a significant discount. And the hospital goes along with that because they're trying to save money. How can the little guy fight against that? It's just so difficult. And when you see behind the scenes, you really start to hate a lot of these companies and how they function and how they work, because they're designed to keep the little guy down because they don't want competition. How is it even possible to start fighting against that?
That is a great question. It is a challenging process. And are you completely kicked out and not able to get your product in if they have a two vendor system? The answer is no. But it is really challenging, and you have to have a surgeon really go to bat for you to get it in, because a lot of these where they have two vendors, it has to be like 90% of the two vendors, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it is very challenging. It's so much more challenging today than it was 5 years ago. And it's so much challenging 5 years ago than it was 10 years ago. It becomes more and more challenging. And for these big companies that bring them, let's say they bring them 1,000 products that are using, and they want exclusivity to give discounts on those 1,000 products. If I was running that company, I would do the same thing. I can't fault them for that.
Right.
However, it does, it is, and it does stifle innovation. It's challenging. A lot of surgeons these days don't have the voice they used to because they're working for hospital systems, and their voice isn't once you're an employee, your voice isn't heard as much as if you're an independent doctor bringing 600 cases to the hospital a year, or procedures. We'll say 600 procedures to the hospital a year. Maybe
Hmm.
it's 300 cases, and so they have less of a voice to help you get the product approved at that point. So yes, there are every corner you turn, there are challenges that you have to overcome. And so the I would say the the best thing I did to keep me going is I took money from a bunch of family and friends. And I don't want to find new family and friends, so I have to take this all the way to the end. And
Hmm.
I just have to keep going. That's what it really comes down to. It's running a marathon. You got to keep going until you get to the finish line. I'm not there, but there's certainly been interest. But there's a lot of challenges at every step.
Do you think it's easier to get into surgery centers because those tend to be physician owned, or at least partly physician owned, and they have more say than these large hospital corporations who really don't care about anything except for money? That they'll tell you otherwise, but at the end of the day, they're looking at black and white numbers on a piece of paper and figuring out how to stay open, how to stay viable, and how to pay the bills. Do you think
Yeah.
surgery centers are easier to penetrate?
Yes. Yes, they are. Not all, because some surgery centers are partially owned by hospital systems, and so that two vendor contracts can go into the centers as well. Some of them are owned by a conglomerate of nationwide surgery center corporations.
Hmm.
However, I will tell you that, which is how we pivoted. So another another naive aspect for me, which we'll talk about the commercialization. So, what you're talking about is hospital approval, right? And so
Hmm.
that's part of the commercialization. So you've taken your idea, you've made product, and I'm actually in our office right now. We have a bunch of product on the shelf in the other room. So we need to get rid of that product. Well, how do we do that? We have to find doctors that want to use it. We have to get it into those facilities. And
Hmm.
so me as a dumb surgeon, I said, this clamp is amazing. It's an extra set of hands in the operating room. It addresses all the problems with the other clamps that are out there. We have great IP on this. Everybody's gonna want to use it." And so I said, we're gonna take our plate and screws that we have, which is a great plate and screws. You never have to bend this. It works all the time. It's in a tray. These distributors out there, these sales agents, they're going to want another tray in their distributor room. They're going to want to put this next to it. Wrong. Grossly wrong. So I was naive on that process as a surgeon. I had to learn the whole sales process of what is going to be easy for a distributor to sell. Well, what's easy for them to sell is products that are on contract, which is, you'll see uh there's a company that out there that offers all hospital items, and now they're into foot and ankle space, and they've been successful around the country because they're on every hospital contract out there, and so that's been great for them. And so what was challenging for us is people didn't want to use our plate and screws because it's another tray for them to bring into their distributorship. It's another tray that the hospital didn't want to see on their shelves. And so we said, how are we going to battle this? And so we came out with the Lapidus in a box. Okay. And why did we do this? Well, number one, I've always liked using nitinol staples. And so our Lapidus in a box is simply a construct that has two nitinol staples and it has an M1 to C2 screw. Why did we come up with this? I didn't realize at the time that we didn't have a market ready product. Well, what does that mean? It means a product that distributors who are, independent sales agents want to sell, and
Hmm.
hospitals that want to allow you to come in. And so now we have this single sterile packed box. We bring it into the hospital, and instead of them immediately saying no, we say, well, it doesn't require any sterile processing. And hospitals, sterile processing is, in hospitals, some hospitals have challenges with that. It's hard to keep employees, as we know. I'm not sure after COVID where all these employees went to,
Yeah.
but we see that all over in the medical field, in our offices, in the hospitals, et cetera. Um, so if you can bring something in that doesn't require sterile processing, and you can tell the hospital it's going to save you $500, suddenly they're interested in potentially letting you come in. And so we pivoted from what we were doing again. This is another pivot we did to bringing in a sterile pack box. Um, and at the same time, we said, well, we can't just put a bunch of new stuff or put a bunch of our old stuff in a box. We have to put something innovative in there other than what surgeons were already using in a new configuration. And so we put together what I believe and others have validated is another unmet need. And so people use these staples in the for Lapidus procedures, and I love these because you can make your incision a lot smaller using these staples.
Hmm.
But this dorsal staple here, which is so important, um, particularly when you use the four-leg staples, they're so prominent, and patients feel those. And even though
Hmm.
they'd say like, "Oh, they're only 2 millimeters thick," or some, et cetera, patients feel that, and to me, that's a problem,
Yeah.
particularly if you're in private practice. Patients don't want to feel that. And so we
Hmm.
designed something to put in the Lapidus in a box, which is this staple trough guide. And so it's a little device we designed that creates a perfect trough so that that staple will then, you can see here, it creates a perfect trough. So that
Hmm.
staple then sits flat. Okay. So the big reason is, why did we want to do this? Well, if we have nitinol staples in our box, the hospital's going to say, well, we have nitinol staples, we can use ours. Well, ours has this staple trough guide. Nobody else has this. It addresses an unmet need. The unmet need is that you won't have to take these patients back to surgery. You won't have to remove the hardware, et cetera. And so I've used these staples in people with a Lapidus procedure. And unless you create your own trough, which is harder than this, you have to take them out. So this is another opportunity in the medical device business to create a new product, address the unmet need, and then have a reason for that facility to allow your product in.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really smart to do the single-use sterile pack thing. It's just so much easier for the reps to transport them, bring them. You don't even need a rep if you want to ship it straight to the hospital. Half the time I'm
Yes.
doing surgery, I don't need a rep. Other half I'm struggling. I say, what's the next step on this one? So I'm not saying reps aren't valuable, because they very much are. But
Yeah.
sometimes there's quite a few procedures I'm like, you can hang out if you want, listen to music, we'll talk, whatever you want, but I don't necessarily need the rep for this part of it. So you could ship that box if someone's done 1, 2, 3 of them already. They certainly don't need a rep in the room. You could ship that directly there. How do you decide how much to charge? Because there are some companies that are notorious for being exorbitantly expensive, and just ridiculously so. Um, and how do you charge what's fair, but still you're spending a lot of money and you have a lot of startup costs associated with that? So you do want some bang for your buck on the back end. Well, how do you figure out what's a fair reimbursement for this?
That is a really good question, and I got to make sure that I answer this responsibly here. Every place is different, and so your reimbursement in, I'm going to use states that this isn't even true, but your reimbursements in Florida might be different than your reimbursements in North Dakota
Hmm.
versus New York versus, Ohio. It's going to be different everywhere. And
What is that based on? Is that based on, like, it's not Medicare guidelines? Is it like a hospital association guidelines? Or you'd think that'd be fairly standardized. Maybe accounting for a cost of living, like San Francisco more than the middle of Wyoming, but I don't know. Feels like it should be fairly similar.
it should be fairly similar. And I don't have a great answer for that, why some are widely different than others. But I do know that in areas where uh, we'll call critical access, things are generally reimbursed more because they
Hmm.
have more room there. Whereas in some of the bigger metropolitan areas, it's a lot tighter in those areas because the cost of everything is probably higher
Sure.
in those areas. But exactly why things are tighter there, great question. I don't have a good answer for that.
So does the hospital tell you what they're going to reimburse, or do you submit your
So
charges and then they
this,
give you
yeah,
whatever they want?
this is where you really lean on a sales rep or a distributor, where and I will say I see it from both sides. So sometimes you have that rep in the room that is so helpful, and they have everything ready to go, and they're there for your bunion case, they're there for your ankle fracture case, and they're amazing. Like, you wouldn't want to go a day without them because they make everything so smooth. Those are the kind of reps we look for when we're trying to sell our product. And they have relationships with hospitals, they have relationships with surgeons, and they generally will recommend the price that the hospital is going to give the stamp of approval.
Okay.
And so we really lean on good reps like that. If you don't have reps like that, um, then someone from our team, generally not me, will have a conversation with the hospital to figure out what a fair price would be to come in at.
Hmm. That's interesting. I think it's fascinating to hear all of this stuff behind the scenes, because I think, like I said, going back to the very beginning, there's two types of people. The first person that was just doing it and going home, and the second person that's
Yeah.
trying to figure out a better way. But hearing this stuff from behind the scenes is fascinating. So
It is a challenging process all over the place. That is for sure. And the every step of the way is a challenge. It's not like, oh, if I make it through I'm making it sound like you should never do this, right? But I will say that with our last few products, it's much, much, much easier than in the beginning. And so another idea for, Jeff, if you have a great idea, if you have a prototype, you don't have to just bring it to the big companies. You can bring it to a startup,
Hmm.
and startup might see value in that. They probably wouldn't be able to pay you with money, but they could potentially give you equity in the company.
Hmm.
And there's lots of avenues there for surgeons to bring a product to market somehow or another.
So if enough Davids get together, they can take down Goliath.
No, you don't wanna take down Goliath because you want Goliath to buy you
Oh, there you
in the
go.
end. So
Okay, then you could
you
befriend Goliath.
you wanna keep Goliath your best friend, but you want to the best way I can say it is you're going to compete with Goliath, but only to, in the end, bring them what will make them better and stronger.
Yeah.
And that's really the goal. Uh, it's a challenging process to get there, but that's the goal.
I want to take us out of here on this, and it's a difficult question. How do you know once you've become successful? And I have to think about this with the podcast. Like, well, how do you know that you've become successful? I get people that come up to me randomly at conferences and tell me they listen to it. And I'm like, well, that's kind of crazy. Thank you. But how do you know that you've become successful? Is it when you become acquired, or is it when you have realized that your products are actually helping surgeons help people? And that is a success in and of itself, maybe not monetarily on a single use basis, but it's certainly successful. How do you view success, and how do you know that you've obtained it?
That's a great question. I'm gonna say that success in this business, you have to have milestones along the way. And so you're having success all along the way to get to the final end goal of success. So if I feel like if you go into this entity and into this job where, I was giving it's a funny story. I was giving a lecture in Montana, and it was a sponsored lecture before a cadaver lab. And
Mhm.
I was being introduced, and the first slide, you always have to have your disclosures. And the person there introduced me and as the CEO of Relge Innovations, right? And I said, well, I might as well just go to my disclosure slide and get it, now that you've already disclosed that, yes, I'm the CEO. And then, cause I'm like, I got to make this funny. I was asking my wife, I'm like, what's a great way to like make this funny rather than like, I'm just some dumb surgeon up here trying to peddle my products to them. Right. And
Yeah.
so, and so he introduced me and I said, yes, that is true. I am the CEO of Relge Innovations. And I can tell you all, like, this is this is a job I would love to get rid of tomorrow, and don't try it. And then I went right into the next slide. But but yeah, I think just like any process. So let's say we want to become a doctor, right? You have to figure out the successes along the way to becoming a surgeon, a successful surgeon in practice like you are and like I am. All along the way, we take tests. I get an A on that test. That is a success. So
Mhm.
you have to, it's, I don't want to say like you have to keep giving yourself pats on the back, but it's the little wins that keep you going to the next spot.
Mhm.
And so, like, when I was in Montana, I had surgeons utilizing our clamp. I had surgeons utilizing our staple trough guide, and they were like, "I really like this. Nobody has this. Why doesn't anybody have this? This is such an unmet need. I use staples all the time. Yeah, my patients feel them. I've been having to take a ronger and gouge this out, and I end up going too deep here or not deep enough here,
Mhm.
and those are successes too.
Mhm.
Um, so
Mhm.
I'm taking every little success I can get along the way. And if you're a surgeon and an idea to a company and they take that and license it, that's a success, right? You don't have to go all the way. You have to take the little successes as you go. And I don't think it's a good idea to say, I'm not going to be successful until I have this company someday acquired. Like that's not the best idea because it's doom and gloom all the way to that point then.
I think
So,
that's a good way to approach it and a good way to look at it. So, anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
no, I don't think so. But I do think that it's such an important topic that you brought up, and I would assume that you can put my contact information down. So if there's any physician out there who has questions on this process, I'm happy to talk to them. I've given you a lot of mistakes I've made in ways that are better ways to proceed forward. Hopefully it's helpful to surgeons.
Definitely. Definitely. Good advice. Well, on that note, we will wrap this up. I want to thank you for your time today and giving us a behind the scenes look at a complicated process that has burned many a physician over the years. And hopefully they can listen to some of the things that you've described and avoid some of the pitfalls that you've provided. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. For Rob Amiot, I'm Jeff Dykes for Paw Patrol Podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol.
Disclaimer. Opinions expressed are those of the content creators and do not represent any employer or entity. The information shared is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice or used in any legal capacity, including establishing standards of care. All efforts have been made to comply with HIPAA regulations. No guarantees are made regarding the accuracy of statements or opinions provided. Interaction with the podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please enjoy this podcast responsibly.